Motivation rarely disappears all at once. It fades. It thins. It loses its urgency long before it fully shuts down. And most people don't notice it happening until they are already confused by its absence. They wake up one day and realize they no longer feel pulled forward by the same things. The goals still exist. The skills still exist. The opportunities may even still exist. But the internal force that once made effort feel obvious is gone. This loss is often misinterpreted. People assume they are burnt out, or depressed, or lazy, or undisciplined. In many cases, none of those explanations fit. What has actually changed is that they have seen the system they are inside of clearly enough that it can no longer motivate them in the way it once did. To understand why motivation dies after you see the system, it helps to understand what motivation actually is. Motivation is not energy. It is not willpower. It is not character. Motivation is a story the mind believes about effort and outcome. As long as that story holds, effort feels worthwhile. When the story collapses, effort feels optional. Eventually, it feels pointless. For most of their lives, people operate inside partial information. They do not see the whole structure. They see enough to keep moving. They are told directly or indirectly that effort leads somewhere meaningful, that progress is proportional, that persistence matters, that if you improve yourself, the system will respond accordingly. This belief does not have to be perfectly true to be motivating. It only has to feel plausible. Plausibility is enough to generate momentum. Seeing the system removes plausibility. Not because everything is fake, but because everything is conditional. You begin to see how advancement actually happens, how recognition is distributed, how incentives distort behavior, how outcomes are shaped by factors unrelated to effort. This does not immediately destroy motivation. At first, it often feels clarifying. You stop blaming yourself for things that never worked. You understand why certain frustrations kept repeating. You feel less personally defective. But clarity has a cost. Clarity removes the optional fog that once amplified effort. Earlier motivation depends on uncertainty, specifically optimistic uncertainty. You keep going because you don't yet know the limits. You believe there is something to unlock. You assume the next push might change the outcome. Once you see the system, the limits become visible. You can predict the likely outcomes before investing the effort. You know the ceiling. You know the trade-offs. You know which moves matter and which ones don't. When the range of outcomes narrows, motivation weakens. This is not cynicism. It is calculation. The brain does not generate sustained effort for outcomes it believes are capped. Another reason motivation dies after seeing the system is that meaning was embedded in the structure itself. People do not just pursue goals, they pursue legitimacy. They want to feel that the game they are playing is worth playing, that the rules make sense, that effort is recognized in some coherent way. As long as the system feels legitimate, effort feels dignified. When legitimacy erodes, effort feels exposed. You can still work, but the work no longer protects you from the feeling that it may not matter. This shift is especially destabilizing for people who are competent inside the system. High performers are rewarded not just with progress, but with identity reinforcement. Their sense of self becomes entangled with movement within the structure. They are the reliable one, the productive one, the disciplined one, the one who figures it out. Seeing the system breaks the feedback loop that sustained that identity. The same actions no longer produce the same internal confirmation. You are still capable, but the system no longer mirrors that capability back to you in a way that feels meaningful. Another subtle change occurs in the language you use with yourself. Before seeing the system, motivation is often driven by moral pressure. Try harder, be better, don't waste time, push through, stay disciplined. These commands work when you believe they lead somewhere. After seeing the system, they begin to feel hollow. Not because you reject effort, but because you no longer accept effort as inherently virtuous. The mind resists being ordered to work for reasons it no longer respects. This creates internal friction. You know how to act, you just don't feel compelled to. This is often mistaken for defiance or apathy. In reality, it is coherence reasserting itself. Motivation cannot survive a misalignment between belief and behavior. Another factor is that seeing the system removes urgency. Urgency thrives on ambiguity. When you do not understand how things work, effort feels exploratory. Every action feels like it might reveal something new. Once the structure is clear, effort loses its exploratory quality. It becomes repetitive. Repetition without agency drains motivation quickly. This is why people describe this phase as feeling flat rather than painful. They are not overwhelmed, they are unconvinced. They are no longer energized by possibility. They are simply aware of probability. At this point, many people try to resurrect motivation by force. They set harsher goals. They impose stricter routines. They shame themselves for slowing down. They consume motivational content designed to override doubts. These strategies rarely work for long. Because the issue is not energy. It is consent. The mind no longer consents to effort in service of a system it no longer trusts. Another consequence of seeing the system is that comparison loses its power. Earlier motivation is often social. You measure yourself against others. You race. You compete. You keep up. Comparison generates urgency. Urgency generates effort. Once you understand how arbitrary advancement can be, comparison loses meaning. You stop racing because you no longer believe the finish line represents what you were told it did. Without comparison, urgency collapses. Without urgency, motivation weakens. This is often experienced as a loss of ambition. But ambition was never the core driver. Ambition was a byproduct of external framing. What actually disappeared is borrowed momentum. Momentum supplied by the structure, by expectations, by implied rewards. There is also a quieter emotional process happening during this phase. Grief. Not grief for what you lost. Grief for what you believed. You grieve the idea that effort was enough, that integrity accumulated, that consistency guaranteed recognition, that patience would be rewarded in proportion to sacrifice. Grief consumes energy. Until it completes, motivation remains low. This is why people who move through this phase cleanly do not try to reignite old motivation. They allow it to die. This sounds dangerous, but it is not. What dies is not drive. What dies is a false alignment between effort and meaning. The difficulty is that there is a gap between old motivation dying and new motivation forming. In that gap, life feels slower. Effort feels optional. Days feel less charged. Decisions feel heavier. This is where people panic. They assume people are becoming passive, that they are wasting time, that they are losing themselves. In reality, the system-based motivator has shut down, and nothing has replaced it yet. New motivation does not come from belief in the system. It comes from authorship. Authorship is the decision to act without external validation, to choose effort for reasons that are not reinforced by a structure, to accept uncertainty on your own terms. This kind of motivation is quieter. It does not shout. It does not rush. It does not demand constant motion. It appears as willingness rather than pressure. Until that willingness forms, motivation remains low. This phase cannot be skipped. If you try to bypass it, you often end up in one of two places. Either you become cynical, disengaging from effort entirely, or you become compulsive, working excessively in directions that no longer make sense. Neither state is stable. The loss of motivation after seeing the system is not a flaw. It is a transition, a pause between being driven by external narratives and being guided by internal choice. The system once supplied meaning, urgency, and justification. Now it supplies information only. Information alone is not motivating. Choice is. But choice requires space. And space feels empty to people who were trained to respond to pressure. Over time, something shifts. You stop asking what is rewarded. You start asking what is worth sustaining. You stop optimizing for outcomes you no longer respect. You begin selecting efforts you can stand behind, even if they go unnoticed. This does not feel exciting at first. It feels almost underwhelming. But it's stable. If your motivation has faded after seeing how the system works, the most accurate interpretation is not that something has gone wrong. It is that something finished. An old contract dissolved. An old story lost credibility. An old engine shut down because it no longer reflected reality. The new engine has not started yet because it has not been built. That interval feels uncomfortable. But it is also where control quietly returns.